The rain poured relentlessly that evening, blurring the neon glow of a lonely gas station sitting at the edge of town. The air carried the sharp scent of oil, gasoline, and that biting chill that crept deep into old bones. An elderly woman named Marjorie pulled her thin coat tighter around her frail frame as she stepped off the bus. Her shoes were soaked through, her fingers trembling from the cold. She had just finished a long day, sorting donated clothes at the local church. Work that barely earned her enough to buy a loaf of bread. In her pocket was a crumpled $10 bill. The last bit of money she had until her next pension check arrived in 5 days. Before we go on, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that still exist in this world, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness. Your support helps keep these true reminders of humanity alive. As Marjorie shuffled past the flickering light of the convenience store, something caught her eye near the gas pumps. A man in a leather jacket, bloodied and bruised, struggling to steady himself beside a motorcycle. The patch on his jacket read Iron Shadows, a name that stirred unease among the townsfolk. People whispered about that group: bikers, outlaws, troublemakers. But in that moment, all Marjorie saw was a man in pain. His breathing was ragged, his knuckles scraped, his expression distant and weary. A few of his companions lingered nearby, their faces hardened but uncertain, muttering about having no money for gas or food. Marjorie hesitated. The world had taught her caution, especially around men like them, big, tattooed, and rough. But her heart had never learned fear when it came to helping someone in need. Slowly, she stepped forward and placed a trembling hand on the man's arm. His skin was ice cold. She didn't ask what happened or who he was. Instead, she reached into her pocket, pulled out her last $10 bill, and pressed it into his rough palm. Then, she walked inside the store and used that money to buy bottled water, a sandwich, and a small pack of bandages. When she returned, the man, whose name she would later learn was Colton, was slumped against his bike, doing his best to hide his pain. She knelt beside him, ignoring the stares of strangers who couldn't understand why a frail old woman would risk approaching men like that. She opened the bottle, helped him drink, and gently wiped the blood from his cheek. "You'll be all right," she whispered softly, her voice as tender as the falling rain. "Even the strongest souls need a little help sometimes." Colton's eyes glistened. He'd been in fights before, broken bones, lost friends, but he had never seen someone so fragile, yet so fearless. When she finished tending to him, Marjorie smiled, wished him safety, and disappeared into the night, carrying nothing but her faith that kindness would one day find its way back to her. That night, Marjorie went to bed hungry. Her small apartment was cold, her cupboards bare. She lit a single candle and sat by the window, watching raindrops trace paths down the glass. She whispered a prayer, not for herself, but for the stranger she had helped. It was how she had always lived, giving quietly, believing deeply, and never expecting anything in return. The next morning, sunlight broke through the clouds. Marjorie woke to a distant rumble of engines. At first, she thought it was thunder. But as the sound grew louder, she pulled back her curtain and froze. A long line of motorcycles, at least 50 of them, were parked outside her apartment building. The ground vibrated softly beneath their engines as curious neighbors gathered to watch. Marjorie's heart pounded as she stepped outside, clutching her sweater. A tall man in a leather vest approached her, holding a bouquet of daisies. Behind him stood Colton. Cleaned up, his bruises fading, his expression warm with gratitude. He smiled and said gently that they had come to repay a debt that couldn't be measured in money. He explained that they were veterans on a charity ride across states, but their gas cards had been stolen at a rest stop, leaving them stranded. Marjorie's small act, her last $10, had kept them going through the night, giving them the strength to find safety and shelter. But they hadn't just come to say thanks. They had spent the night sharing her story online, calling friends, and raising funds. That morning, they handed her an envelope containing over $20,000. Money donated by bikers and strangers who had been moved by the story of the elderly woman who gave all she had to help. It was enough to fix her roof, fill her cupboards, and make sure she'd never go hungry again. Tears streamed down Marjorie's cheeks as the group's leader knelt and said, "You showed us compassion when the world turned away. Today, the road gives it back to you." But that wasn't all. The bikers also rebuilt the small community garden outside her building, a space she once tended lovingly before arthritis forced her to stop. They brought fresh soil, flowers, tools, and plants. Together, they worked through the afternoon, laughing, planting, and sharing stories. The sound of engines blended with laughter, forming a melody of hope. Children from nearby apartments came out to help water the flowers, and neighbors who hadn't spoken in years joined in. By sunset, the courtyard was alive with color. Marjorie stood at its heart, her hands trembling not from weakness but from gratitude. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, valued, and loved. Before leaving, Colton handed her a custom-made leather vest with a small patch that read, "Guardian of the Road." He told her she was now an honorary member of their group, and that wherever they rode, they would carry her story. A living reminder that even the smallest act of kindness can change countless lives. Marjorie pressed the vest to her chest, overwhelmed. She couldn't find words big enough to express what she felt. All she could do was whisper, "Thank you," as the roar of 50 motorcycles echoed into the distance. A moving storm of gratitude and grace. Marjorie looked around at the blooming flowers, the envelope on her table, and the laughter of her neighbors. And, in that quiet moment, she realized something profound. The true miracle wasn't in what she received, but in what she gave. A spark of kindness that reignited hope in a weary world. Before we end this story, I'd love to hear from you. What would you have done if you were in Marjorie's place? Comment below. Your words matter more than you think. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness. Together, we can keep spreading real stories that prove kindness always finds its way home.